Okay, this time, are you, is this visible on your screens right now? Is this PPT visible on your
Yes,
screens?
yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Last time you didn't find that PPT on your screens. Okay. Yeah. So this is our second live session, synchronous session. Uh, and this, you must keep in your mind that this synchronous session doesn't mean lecturing you on any particular topic. It simply means that we are going to clarify issues, discuss problems and concerns that related to the module. So in this live session, we will cover some important and key ideas, key concepts of the module one. And you are at the end of this module, you are expected to learn what is philosophy and how philosophers philosophize, how to identify philosophical problems, learn to think critically, analytically, and analyze the challenges of doing philosophy. And you're also supposed to evolve, in learn to evaluate, to analyze, and learn to practice skills that you can learn from this course. The evaluative skill, the analytical skill, and you can finally, or you can apply this philosophical knowledge and skills in real life situations. So yeah, what is philosophy? I have seen you are now you have learned a lot of things about philosophy. What is philosophy? How philosophical studies matter? Because you are now responding to the questions that has been raised at the end of the module, modules. So your response is the way I'm measuring the learning outcomes. So this is the way how I measure what you have learned. Uh, okay, so briefly, I will recapitulate some important ideas, and then finally we will discuss if you find things problematic and the questions that you want me to answer. So philosophy, as you know, is derived from two Greek words, philo and sophia. Philo means love and sophia means wisdom. Thus, the etymological meaning of the word philosophy is love of wisdom. If uh, you must be asking, you must be thinking about this context, how the word love has been used. So, love in this context is to be understood as a strong desire for knowledge or a particular object in general. Whereas wisdom is the correct application of knowledge. Therefore, philosophy in this context could refer to a strong desire of human person to possess knowledge and apply it correctly. So here you are now invited to the philosophical knowledge and practice. Its correct application is practice it in your real life situations. This is what you need to do when you learn some philosophical cycles. You have knowledge of philosophical ideas. Then you are applying your correct applications when you apply the knowledge in real life situations. This is what we call wisdom and its correct application. So this is how philosophy begins. Philosophy begins when when a group of people start thinking rationally, critically, and morally. You know that it was Greek, uh, where these people start practicing philosophy. Practicing philosophy at the time was bringing bringing issues to philosophical inquiries. As you know that in case of Thales, Anaximander or Anaximenes, they start inquiring the world. What is the first principle? This was the common question of these three philosophers, pre-Socratic philosophers. Concern was to interpret and to discover what is the world, what's the universe made of. And their first attempt was to investigate the first principle out of which everything is made. So, for this inquiry, they use logic, they use reason, and these people, by asking questions over the nature of things, they attempted to discover things, to investigate into the nature of things through the aid of reason alone. For that reason, we call these people first thinkers, first philosophers, because they started at their times, they started thinking rationally, critically, and morally. Therefore, Greek represents the beginning of philosophy and development of human thought. And reason is a powerful tool to philosophize. So, reason is an instrument of philosophy. Philosophy has many branches. As you know, its important branches are is metaphysics, it has epistemology and ethics, logic. Uh, Metaphysics is one of the important branches of philosophy that opens varieties of knowledge. The branch, it has its own branch, sub branch. For example, metaphysics include cosmology, cosmogony, eschatology, philosophy of self, ontology, and so on. All these areas of knowledge have separate problems, have different problems, and they open different avenues, they open different avenues of thought and introduce us varieties of knowledge. But generally, we see metaphysical problems, and we know that metaphysics is one of the widest branches of philosophy, because before science, as you know, science has taken only material aspects, material nature of things, and discussed things and the nature of things in their own the area from empirical point of view. While as metaphysics, as you know, is widest, it has accommodated all entities having metaphysical nature. So metaphysics is one of the widest branches of philosophy. It studies being in general. Being here means, you must be thinking of being. What is being? Being, as you know, is studied in philosophy as anything that exists, that has existence. The being is anything that exists. But here in metaphysics, it's not only that, it not only discusses being that are material in nature, but also discusses being that is immaterial in nature. In this sense, metaphysics discusses those entities also that are beyond, our sense organ experience. So it's beyond material, framework. So those entities also, which is uh, immaterial in nature. For example, we have, we can say self, the entity of self, God, and the problems of life after death, and freedom, mind, the existence of mind, and so on. These are the problems of, metaphysical problems that is immaterial. We call them being, immaterial being. So metaphysics is the study of being. So being here is not only material being, but being immaterial as well. So this is the brief introduction of metaphysical entities and how to define, how to identify a metaphysical entity and the problems of metaphysical issues. We can say metaphysical issues. So you can bring this, you suppose, we can say, are humans free? It's one of the important metaphysical questions that has attracted philosophers from the centuries. So what is freedom? This sort of questions can be taken seriously in metaphysics. And what is, the nature of human existence? so, you know, that the dichotomy of soul and body, these are the issues that can be differently taken in the area of metaphysics. But how do we know there is something, is the question of epistemology. So epistemology is the study of knowledge, the science of knowledge. Epistemology deals with knowledge. What is knowledge? How humans know? How do we know? What are the sources of knowledge? What is valid knowledge and invalid knowledge? And what are the criteria of testing the truth? All these things can be discussed in another important branch of philosophy, epistemology. Then we have one of the practical branches of philosophy, as ethics. Ethics is, what really we require all the time in every sphere of life. We require ethics because, as the philosophers admitted, that without ethics or morality, human beings are equal to animals. So ethics, the sense of this moral thinking, can distinguish you from the realm of animals. So without ethics, a human being can become a beast. These are the philosophers' the reflection remarks. So ethics is one of the important branches of philosophy that studies action, right action and wrong action. What's right action and what's wrong action? We can see that it deals with human behavior, what's good behavior and what's bad behavior. So it's a framework how humans should act. What should we do? What should we ought to do? What should we avoid? So these are the guidelines. These are the, how humans should act as a responsible moral agent. Then ethics discusses a lot of things, like it has developed its advanced branch in different areas. It has developed the branch in medical field, bioethics, clinical ethics, in the ethics in polity and governance, ethics in environment and or environmental ethics, we can say. We have also ethics in this journalism. Uh, so ethics is no is really like other branches. It has its utility. It has practical implications. Because of its practical implications and utility, this branch is one of the, we can say, one of the practical and unavoidable branches of philosophy. It lies everywhere. And then we have logic. Logic is a toolbox, as some philosophers call logic, the study of methods and principles of philosophizing. So logic studies what is right reasoning. It distinguishes from correct reasoning from incorrect reasoning. Logic then is the study of principles and methods to evaluate, to test arguments, to build propositions and arguments and test them, check their validity and invalidity, and so on. We have other branches as well, but these are the important branches that you must be familiar about, because this is this whole course makes philosophy a dynamic activity. Studying philosophy is not studying history. We study history and we find some historical frozen facts and remembering them. But in philosophy, we should engage ourselves with the philosophers' views, arguments, and ideas that has been, you know, that has been given and emphasized by philosophers. So your responsibility as a philosophical student, a philosophy student, is you have to show your agreement, your approach, your own approach to the problem, your own agreement and disagreement. If you agree with the view of any particular view, if you don't agree, if you disagree, you need to elaborate your disagreement. You need to justify how you find things problematic, how you find this idea is should not be like this. It should be the way you articulate that. So reading philosophy makes you an active learner and observer, and then you can create your own ideas. You can make your own ideas this is as a sort of responsibility as a philosophy student. You have to engage yourself with the content, with the text, and then you need to ask your own questions. You need to examine this whole this the content that you have been connected to, and then you can interpret and critique it. This is how mostly we study philosophical texts. So your criticism, your engagement, your questioning, examining activity is a very, very important task that you should not avoid. And then, as you know, philosophy is uh, taking care of our societies as well. Our societies can become inclusive by studying and spreading and introducing philosophical studies and philosophical knowledge and truths. And we have seen from Socrates up to our contemporary philosophers, they used to keep eye on socio-political and religious issues, and time to time tries to address the issues, trying to address issues, and offering their theories, their ideas to counter the socio-political and other issues, to counter the problems, and to keep societies, we can say, stable and peaceful in different ways, in different manners. So in terms of we have seen the world is face to face with a lot of challenges. We have global challenges like wars, we have threats, we have the phenomena of hatred, the phenomena of the phenomena of violence, and so on. A lot of things we experience throughout the world. And in view of these things, philosophy offers a new paradigm. So philosophical studies can restore the needs of our times. So this is a way to counter the challenges of social political instability. And this is how philosophers act. Philosophers all the time, uh, are bringing phenomena into their philosophical praxis and philosophize with them. So, what is a philosophical act? If you might be thinking of an action, an act of philosophizing. Its philosophical act is used to describe the act of engaging oneself in the questioning activity and bringing things into the philosophical praxis. Philosophers philosophize not only to answer questions that bother their minds, but to ask big questions for further inquiries. So, the aim of studying philosophy is not filling your head with textual knowledge and observable facts, but rather to reflect and cultivate a constructive and critical disposition towards it. And philosophers, as you know, the philosopher, who is a philosopher? As you know, before the word philosopher, philosophers, particularly some ancient philosophers, have been, they have been called sages instead of philosophers. It was Pythagoras who coined the term and wanted to be considered as a philosopher. And philosopher is someone who practices philosophy, who philosophizes, or we can say doing philosophy, one who is doing philosophy, who asks us, what does that mean, doing philosophy? Who asks us deep questions and tries to seek logical and systematic answers to the questions. In ancient times, a philosopher was someone who lived according to a certain way of life, focusing upon resolving varieties of questions about life and the world, and in general about human condition, and so on. Thus, anyone who's most arduously committed to this attitude would have been considered a philosopher. And philosophers has a peculiar attitude. To become a philosopher, one must question everything and have an inquiring mind. As Descartes puts it, we shall not become philosophers even if we read all the reasoning of Plato and Aristotle. if we cannot form a sound judgment upon any proposition. Thus, to become a philosopher, one must bend one's mind to thought process and meditation. So this is what actually at the beginning of the talk I have told you the act that should not be avoided when you read a philosophical text, when you think on anything that you find philosophically problematic. You are uh, you are supposed to offer your own perspective. You are supposed to offer your own ideas, own theory, and you should bring things in your own thought process. This practice can give birth to your own original content or idea. This is what actually philosophy wants you to do. You should not just study and fill your head with the readings and textual knowledge, but you need to create your own idea. You need to build your own argument. You need to support your own assumption or theory through logic, through and other philosophical. You need to support your views from logical and analytical point of view. But this is what actually a philosophy student has to do. He's committed to do this sort of things. This is what makes a philosopher's philosopher. This sort of thing. You need to ask, question everything in order to know clearly, and you can raise good questions so that a shift of a scholar's attention and your attention should be it should be on something that can give us a new that can open at least new avenues of thought, to give us new knowledge. So this is required. Thank you. And in this whole course, if you have any question or query, you can use you can either directly ask me or use with this chat function, chat box. Let me tell you, at the end of the module 1, I have shared an article entitled How to Read Philosophy. Go through that article, read the highlighted portion, and practice what is required over there at the end of the module. One, you are supposed to respond your own, your answers, like you are going to synthesize two philosophers at the end, and for that you need to take some important ideas from the article, how to read a philosophical text. Do you want to read this for information, or do you want to read the text for enlightenment? So there are different key ideas, important ideas that has been highlighted for you so that you can grasp main things that can help you to read a philosophical text and write a good philosophical essay. So I recommend you to go through that article and take the key points and practice that, and start practicing. Practicing here, I mean, you should start writing philosophical write-ups, because your final assessments, your major assessments are not long, oral type examination, but your assessments are writing good philosophical essays. So what you need to do, just to take the insights from the article and start practicing writing philosophical